recess, 1 o'clock. Fiscal year 18 county budget, county attorney request secretary, public safety request to transfer detective funding from Bath County Attorney to detention center, request to stipend for deputy attraction, sanitary request. Anyway, I guess you're the only one here.
Well,
I meant Corey will be here, I'm assuming.
I know, he had a funeral in Boise. Yeah, one of his good friends got killed in a cabin fire, so, he was over there, I think the funeral was today or it was yesterday, and my understanding he wasn't gonna be able to make it, so.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know where that stands. I don't know if there was any other further discussion we need to have on the detective thing with the detention center. I thought we kinda had that. I think it was a solid fix for that, and I was trying to get Captain Wenzel down here, but, I think that's a pretty solid idea. And then I don't know if Brandon, he's on his way to Alabama, so I don't know if he had any further discussion with you in regards to stipends or any of that. So, I did get a chance to talk to him about trying to get people sworn in and hired, so the only thing, I don't have any information on that one, so.
I think we could make a motion and just put a caveat to it,
Okay.
as long as it is deemed legal by the county attorney.
And I didn't get a chance to talk with him Monday, it's been kind of a whirlwind this week, so.
And that actually gives us the opportunity to give him a couple of weeks
Okay.
to get back to us on that. We'll be adopting the budget hopefully in mid-August, about a month from now. That should be plenty of time.
Okay.
And then still give Debbie the time she needs to input everything.
So that's all I got. I'm gonna try to make it short, sweet.
Well, as far as the stipend, I will move that we grant the sheriff's request to increase his revenue in the detention center by 4 inmates per night, to use the additional revenue as he sees fit, including a stipend for a deputy in the Wheatland area, pending approval by the county attorney.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. As the motion was just stated, any other discussion? Not, we'll go to a vote, all in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you have anything else for me, I have to go meet with another offender, so.
Okay.
Another offender? Is that what you're calling the three of us?
No, it's, unfortunately, we had a bunch of sentences last week, and so we had some guys that were sentenced for violent crimes and some sexual crimes, and so they have to come register with me, and so,
Okay.
I guess we lacked that communication, so after 2 o'clock would've been good, and he showed up, so I'm like, now, let me go get this done. So, thank you.
Thanks, Win.
Okay. Julie, I guess you'd be next on the list here.
Yes, I had submitted a claim for a different GPS unit, and it's with Juniper Systems instead of Frontier Precision. They're about $2,000 less, so the $5,000 grant would cover all but $287 or $47 or something. So that's what that would come out of last year's, or past year's budget. And then just wondering if you're going to vote on and increase my fuel expenses to the $3,000 to cover the new employee. So that was, as far as, I've cleared it with Teresa on the GPS, and the folks are going to deliver it and provide training right on site here, so there won't be any shipping charges. There won't be any additional fees for some training. And it sounds like it's much more like what I've been using and what I'm used to, so the transition should be much easier than trying to learn a whole new system. So Teresa cleared it with the theft folks, so we're good on that.
Okay, I'm good.
I move we increase Julie's vehicle, line item by $3,000 as requested.
Or to $3,000.
Two,
To $3,000.
All right, thank you.
From 1,200 to 3,000.
all right. As amended by Julie.
I will second that.
Okay, move to second to increase Julie's from 1,200
1,200.
to 3,000 on their mileage. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Julie. Oh, I also move that I don't think this needs a motion, but that Julie go ahead and proceed with getting the equipment that you need, that we talked about with the grant and the,
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
Julie.
much for
They
checking
said they
those
should have
prices.
it built, next week and provide some serial numbers and all that sort of stuff, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you have, go ahead, go ahead.
I don't know that Debbie necessarily has anything. Oh, you do, our commission budget. How much are we over?
Oh, poop. I knew, too much going on.
We can wait too, if you wanna go get it.
Let me see if it shows any of these that I brought. I might have to go back up and get it.
Over to my other desk.
It's almost 12,000.
Okay. All right, so we'll have to do an amendment for that. Perhaps Pilt.
And that's where I'm working on trying to get everybody that looks like they've gone over. That's why I was hoping Doug would have interface done. They still try and balance, so. Because they get, their revenues are their revenues. I mean, their expenditures, they are what they are. I got payroll posted, so I just need to go through and look and see who has overspent and why. And we can go from there, whether it's fun. Now, that's the tricky part, because commissioners, clerk of courts, justice court, Corey, everybody, me, Michelle, we're all in the general fund. So when you pull reports and you look at the general fund itself is not over. Just the commissioners and maybe a couple other accounts.
Couple other accounts.
Mine's over, Michelle's is over, because when we did the budget, we didn't have our cost of living increases in there, and I had an
Okay.
accident, and then that happened, but I didn't get budget amendments done. So when I entered the budget, it was right.
Those are things we can fix, not a big
So-
deal. Okay, so
But that's where
commissioners
then
and
the whole
accounting.
fund itself isn't over, like they were talking about yesterday. Individual accounts in the fund are, but not the fund itself. So it's kind of like borrowing from one of the other accounts concept that they talked about yesterday.
Okay. So what are you thinking? What do you think we need to do?
we're going by the fund, we're fine. It's the individual account within the funds. And the general fund is the only one that has pretty much individual accounts. Everybody's standalone by their fund, for the most part. So it's really just the general fund. Do we want to address that individually? Or just leave it in the general fund as an aggregate? I can do either way. It's kind of a preference. We want to see the detail.
Okay,
I haven't run all the totals yet. I just started working on that Friday, and then here we are, 3 days later.
okay, so here's a question then. The law states that if you don't have enough money in your fund,
Fund.
that you are personally liable. The general fund is an issue, which we heard at the DOA training and talked about a little bit. What if you have somebody who's chronically over? How many people does it put in jeopardy of having to pay that personally? So if we had Ann from the clerk and recorder's office go out and buy a new Suburban for $40,000, and it's bright blue.
Any other accessories?
I'll think about it.
Right. And let's say Ann is the elected official for the clerk and recorder's office. Who's responsible for that $40,000? Even if it's only over in the clerk and recorder's portion of that. Could it be through district court, everybody, all elected officials and department heads within the general fund? Potentially. So, I kind of think it's important to keep each of the different departments solid so that we at least have a shown effort to keep that from happening. Does that make sense, or am I totally off
Yeah,
base?
that makes sense.
Okay,
Another way that makes sense is Joe over here has gone over his budget $5,000. It comes out of all the other budgets to make that up. And everyone else has been frugal, trying to keep, so, yeah, I think it just makes sense to make each individual fund whole, however you need to do it. Personal opinion.
yeah, I appreciate
Because
that.
I've given up the idea of the bright blue Suburban, so.
Yeah, sorry, Ann. Does that work for you, Debbie?
Mm-hmm.
And then I think we need to address those particular departments in the next budget to make sure that we're not overly low. We cut the commission budget, maybe we cut it too far. Now, granted, we're still taking care of, the heat and stuff for ambulance, or for extension. We do have, I know one area that we went over, we talked about earlier today is our gas travel. For the commissioners, our next budget only has 2,000, I think. We should raise it to 4. And I don't wanna do that because I don't think we should. We heard it yesterday, right and wrong is not necessarily legal and illegal. I do not think it's right, the way that Franklin, you take as much mileage as you do and refuse to use the county vehicles, which are an eighth of the cost. But I am making that suggestion because you haven't, and you should have, because it's to accommodate you. But we can't go over in our next budget because you haven't been a part of the budgeting process. So that's the reason I'm the one saying
Like I
we
said
need to
before,
raise
I was
that
the one
to
that said there
4.
has to be more in there. And as far as the cost, whether I'm in my vehicle or the county vehicle, the cost is still there. In fact, I
There-
lose by taking my vehicle, according to my
Franklin?
accountant.
You have to realize, we're not looking at you and your finances, we're looking at the county finances. When you take the county vehicle, it is an eighth of the cost of paying the mileage reimbursement. That's why we put in our policies that people have to use the county vehicles first, not just take their own. So, I don't think we need to argue this any further, but I do want it made clear why I am the one suggesting we increase our budget. It is not because I use that mileage, it's because you do, but as one of the commissioners, our fund is way over by and large because of that, because of your usage.
And I pay for the rooms, I always pay for my registration.
Frankly,
on my
nobody's
own, and
questioning
that's
that.
what's added on there.
Nobody's questioning that. We have to make some decisions. You're not. Somebody has to, and it needs to be noted why. That's it. There's no need to get defensive on this. We just need to get the answers here so we build a responsible budget. That's it. So any others, Debbie, that are over in the general fund?
I'm gonna have to read that report. I know Michelle and I were, and we got to calculating, and it's because of when we first did the wages, it didn't include hers in my market adjustment.
Sure.
And then we had my accident, and it all went in, and it never got changed. And it just, working on stuff, it hit. So I was like, how can we be over?
So any other funds within the general fund that are over that you know of, or should we just talk about that on Monday? Give you a little bit more
Probably
time to
better talk
find
about it on
those?
Monday, make sure. I
Okay,
don't think there was any others. Maybe one or two, but they were like just a few dollars, unusual things that happened.
okay,
It won't happen again. Kind of like your contracted services, we had to pay for a separate investigation due to a grievance that we didn't plan on, so that's what took that line over. So it's kind of like Mike, he had some that were in his budget that were one-time things that might have put him over a line, but won't be routine.
okay,
And that's, I got about halfway through it.
okay, no biggie, I was just curious.
Yeah, I think that's started.
So, another one-time, cost is we had an accident with the extension, or with the, Explorer. And I don't know if you've seen it, but the whole back window is covered with a blanket now. I was talking to Michelle last night, we drove back together, we shared the county car. And she told me that Extension uses the county cars a lot, the fleets. Virginia also did, and Virginia was actually putting money away to save for a vehicle. Again, county vehicles less expensive than reimbursement for a personal. So that might be something we wanna look at, is a CIP for, not new, used vehicles. But I'm just gonna throw that out there, if there's anything extra to start a CIP, like we have the sanitation, to replace that Explorer. The other departments that may have the same need, maintenance, both Mike and Eric use their own vehicles for all the work that they do, and neither of them has ever requested reimbursement. That's really nice of them to do. It is beyond the call of duty, and I think it would be responsible for the county to provide them a vehicle. They need a truck. I don't know if we necessarily get it this year or if we start a savings for it, but we need to address that. And again, used, doesn't need to be pretty. I do not agree with buying new. So I don't think it needs to be real expensive either.
Do
And
we
then-
have the option to go through the state surplus,
Mhm.
like the city does?
Mhm. Absolutely. We have had people look at those vehicles before and they're in pretty tough shape, but,
There's a lot of those, the highway department ones, we can get a hold of Davey Rouser, cause he has access to all those maintenance records.
that'd be great.
Especially, if they're just gonna be running around in town, because I realize they gotta go to Helena, if they're just gonna be running around in town get one of those old highway dump trucks, would be, they're small enough to where they could get around everything here, that would work pretty good, if we get one that's got a decent maintenance record on it.
Absolutely, I think that's a great idea.
And I think that the city can go in before the auction maybe and buy one? Or they just have them, they rotate them through all year long, and then they can, if you tell them what you want, that department will contact you when that vehicle comes in. I think that how that works.
Yeah,
But that'd be a good way, we don't have to bid with Marine, he just gives us a price on
absolutely. It's a great idea.
You talk
That could
about
work for all of them.
1 ton dump.
it. Yeah, just one of those 1-ton dumps, and then like the extension could get one of those, vehicles State Highway uses all the time for their stuff. You know, they got pretty good, they do good maintenance on them.
Yeah,
I think that if you went with one that was from a specific department, not one out of the motor pool, I think those are the ones that get trashed most. The ones that departments have, they take pretty good care of. So that would be a good way we could save some money and get a pretty reliable vehicle, I would think.
do you wanna set those guys to looking? See what they
What's
can
that?
find? Do you wanna set those guys to looking to see what they can find?
Yeah, I would think
and-
that that'd be a good idea,
Okay,
and see if
All
we
right.
can't find something that's fairly reasonable.
okay, sounds good, I like that idea. So those are just a couple of things that, came up just from chit-chatting yesterday in the car. The other thing, I'm gonna go to Wynn and Corey's request to change the deputy. I don't know if you saw all the emails, and it's kind of, it doesn't really matter. But Wynn started requesting that a deputy be a shared expense between himself, well, the sheriff's department and the county attorney, back in 2015. He was just the undersheriff then. Brenda did not bring that forward to us. Corey did in 2015 in September, so it was at the end of the budget. So there was agreement back then. If Wynn says we don't wanna do the cost share anymore, that's absolutely fine, but that 27,000 needs to come back to the general fund. And there's a couple of places that we could go ahead and put that. That 27,000 was taken from everybody in the general fund to help pay the detective. So it isn't needed anymore in, it would be coming out of the county attorney's department, so it would be spread back to public safety, since it's still gonna be paid by sheriff's department, split between his office, which doesn't change, and the detention center now. So what we have is the additional 1,800 that we just granted Julie. We also have 12,000 that's needed for the library, that is out of the general fund. We have 5,000 that is requested now from Corey for another secretary, just for 8 hours a week. We have an emergency, I think, with the GIS situation in the planning department, community development department. That has to get funded before we have somebody seriously hurt. We also have, and add to any of this, if you see any, Debbie, I think personnel's gonna have to go up this year, because we already have another grievance that it's gonna cost us a little bit more. We have the silos, which could be financially impacted from the mussels. DES is requesting a vehicle as well, forgot to mention that. We had a shortfall in revenue for the justice of the peace. And I think that's it, I made a list. So those are just a couple of things, and I think I've forgotten something, but it gets us started anyway.
Would DES as a vehicle also be covered by some of his money?
It could be potentially, yeah, and he could do state surplus too, just like extension and maintenance, and see what he can find. But yeah, we should ask him if he could actually have that come out of his grants, I'm not sure. So I am wondering if we can take that $27,000 and put 15 to GIS. And that would be in the planning department. I hate to take it out of the general fund, but without another option, it already came out of the general fund essentially anyway. And then the other thing is maybe putting the balance of that into a legal fund. We have a legal fund right now, it's funded through PILT, and what it's for is if we need legal defense. Well, if we want to use that for any legal services, we certainly could, and that means hiring somebody to come in and do union negotiations, which we've done in the past. We hire an attorney to come in and represent us in union negotiations, and that would come out of the legal fund. If another department needs an attorney to review something, that could also come out of the legal fund. Any thoughts on that?
So if that deal with Nicole,
Mm-hmm.
with Mosted's, if that went to court, is that where we would use that legal fund at, if they were to sue the county for denial?
Yes, Yeah.
Would that be the department, or would that be the commissioners?
it would
Probably
be,
be both, huh?
well, the money would come out of the legal fund, which is everyone,
Irregardless of who's involved in this. Oh.
right? And it's always the commissioners that okay it. We're the last stop. Nobody can really do anything without us saying okay. So it would essentially and ultimately be the commissioners.
And the 15 for the GIS, is that Nicole's, that's basically her salary to make that data up for addresses, so we have addresses assigned to people. Does that include did she not get new software? She got new software, was that in last year's budget?
She did
Or she
not
was-
get the new
She's
software.
getting new, so we
Yeah.
already told her that we would do that, right? So
Right,
would that
I
come
forgot
out of
about
that
that.
15, or does that come out of her other?
We would have to add to that 15.
Okay.
We could talk to Nicole about how much. She used to have 18 that was budgeted from 911. She never came all the way up to the 18. 11, 12 was usually average. With things going a lot faster now, I decided to cushion it, and that's why I proposed the 15. But I would think if we went ahead and did maybe the 18, there would be enough for her to get that program. And if it was still short with things kind of cooking, she could come back to us and say, I just need a little bit more.
So what,
And that would be at the end of the year.
so now that we paid that, the sheriff's department wants that information, do they still have to pay her for that information?
No, we're handling it now. We're fixing that problem.
Or did, so that headache there has gone away?
Right,
And then Wynn's gonna keep that money in his 911 system?
exactly. Yep,
So that whole hurdle is taken care of if we do that.
correct. I like the idea of those guys working together as partners. We're one county, we should be working that way. But I sent out an email last week, and I've talked to Dave in person, one-on-one, and I mentioned it in a meeting. Nothing's happened yet.
Oh,
I got no response to the email, and my thinking is, let's go ahead and put a fix in now. If those guys can get together and talk in the next 2 to 3 weeks, then we can readdress what we put in and take it out.
okay.
If they don't, at least we have addressed an issue that is literally gonna kill somebody if we don't. Regardless, we can still do the 6,000 for that program, even if they work something out, we can pull it out, or 911 may pay for that program as well. But we can't take the 911 funds without working with Wynn.
Okay. So that other 12 that we had left from that would go to this legal fund?
Yes, yeah.
I guess the other thing that we got there is with Corey is that with, how do we address funding this murder trial? What are we gonna, do we know? I mean,
Yes.
obviously, we don't know what it is, but where's it gonna come from?
Well, on a lot of this stuff, we've got to be the heads of cool. We can't panic. Here's what we know. Both you and I communicated with Brent Light. It's probably not gonna be a death trial, so we don't need to worry about finding $1 million.
Yeah.
We know that, last time we got together, Val said, all those extra expenses are coming out of my budget. So we don't need to put extra money in the county attorney's budget for that. We will have to address Val. Now, she's reimbursed for everything except for jury fees. Well, she is reimbursed for jury fees, but she goes above. She gets donuts, provides coffee. They pay for the basic 3 squares. And then the other thing is expert witnesses are not paid for. This commission has a record going back long before I got here of if you need something extra for an extra circumstance, come and talk to us. We've always worked together with people. Right now, what I would say is we don't know. It's probably not even gonna hit this year. The first court appearance is October. There's always continuances. I will be surprised if it even hits this year, this fiscal year. This is probably something we'll have to worry about next fiscal year, and then we may have a better idea what we're looking at. As far as extra workload, the AG has already told both you and I that they are more than happy to help, and there's no cost for
Yeah.
that. We already have a deputy county attorney from Missoula helping us out. So I don't think we need to worry about it yet.
Okay.
I think we need to keep our eyes open, I think we need to continue to communicate, but I do not think that we need to react, because we don't know what we're reacting to yet.
And right now, the process with tilt right now, we got more than we expected, so we have some excess in there that if we have to draw, we can draw on it.
Yes.
Which is gonna make it even tougher for the next year because we don't know what's gonna happen the next year. They were saying
Yeah.
a 15%, they thought maybe a 15%, so that puts us right back where we're at anyway. But we
Exactly,
still have that to work with if we get into that situation.
absolutely, yes. Marcy's Law was the other thing. Corey wanted the extra secretary because of Marcy's Law. Brooke used to be victim witness advocate for 4 days a week essentially, and 1 day a week as the secretary, or it was 3 and 2. Debbie, do you know the percentage off the top of your head?
60/40.
60/40.
40% for Corey, basically 2/3
So she was
victim witness.
1/3 secretary, 2/3 victim witness. So, she actually put in with Board of Crime Control for 100% funding, just victim witness advocate, because of Marcy's Law. Well, Marcy's Law right now is in court, because of so many arbitrary and undefined pieces to it. We don't know what that's gonna look like, if it's even gonna come out of court. So, I think the last time Corey was here, he said, I'd like a secretary for 8 hours a week. That would be one of our employees upstairs, who is only at 32 hours. Adding 8 hours, she's already getting the full health insurance and all those benefits. It's about $5,000 a year, additional to Corey's budget. I say we go ahead and grant that, and that's it at this point.
Yeah.
So that would be, some of that 27,000 would be an increase to his budget of 5 to cover the secretary.
Okay.
So there's also the money he put in his fund, budget for the contract attorney. I think what we would be wiser to do is actually put that into our legal fund, so that as we need legal assistance, we have that fund to get it. And we've overdrawn that 27,000 anyway, so we'll have to take some of that. Leave 5 to pay for the secretary, and then the rest of it can help out the rest of the general fund, which right now needs a little bit of help. It's not broke, it's not on the verge of broken, but we do have to actually cut our spending where we can. just to be responsible, and so we don't have as much need for reserves. And we did have an expectation of about 23,000 in revenue that just did not come in. So that kind of balances that out. But nobody is depleted that way. And it's kind of the nature of the beast with the general fund. If you guys want, one of the things we could look at that kind of takes Corey out of having to be part of a unit within the general fund, we could actually create like a 10,003 fund and make that county attorney. Ben, that was part of yesterday's training. Sheriffs used to be part of the general fund, and they are still in a few counties, but because they had so many needs for funding, many counties divided them out, gave them their own fund, and said, okay, there you go, that's your money. Live within your means. So it's something we could look at, but right now, the county attorney is part of the general fund, and when a fund within the general fund overdraws, like commissioners, county attorney is one of those departments that comes in to help. When the county attorney is asked to pay for half of a detective, all the other funds within the general fund give a little bit of money to make that happen. It's just the way it works in the general fund.
So we're taking that detective, putting him back into public safety. Is there any way that bill comes, and they use that detective for the county attorney? Does the county attorney have to pay billable hours to the sheriff, to the public safety?
No, because we are one county again.
It's the same thing. Okay.
Right. Even now, Corey had no authority, has no authority over the detective. Totally, he is managed by the sheriff. And that was the way it was proposed in 2015 and the way it happened last year. If the sheriff says, I want you to work on this with the county attorney, that's his call. If the sheriff, and this happened in the past, if the sheriff says, you're not allowed to work with the county attorney, they're not allowed to work with the county attorney. That happened just before John Flynn passed. So there's no shared management of any employee. It doesn't work. So the clerk and recorder treasurer's office was shorted last year in the budget process. So Doug came to us and said that he needed a little bit extra also for one of the mandates from the state, and I forget what it was. But it's an increase of about 10,000, so that's the other thing that could come from that excess money in that department. So with the detective's salary of 27,000, plus the the additional civil attorney at 20, that's 47,000. So if we subtract 18,000, which would be for the GIS program and GIS services, and we subtract 10,000, which is for our legal defense fund, and then we subtract 11,000 for clerk and recorder. That gives us 8,000 left, 2,000 for sanitation. It gives us 6,000 left. And that could also help offset the overage in accounting, county commissioners, or also go to the legal defense fund. And I think next year we'd have to find a different funding source for the planning department because that really shouldn't come out of the general fund. But right now, I just don't have any other options unless we did PILT, which I hate to do. We could. So there's a lot of different options we could look at. How much over is accounting, Debbie?
Oh, Michelle, it's like maybe $500-600 is all, it's not much.
Okay, is that it for both?
Well, no, that's just hers, mine, it's a little more. But that's just, there's the employee benefit line too that's not exhausted.
Okay, so that could,
So that could offset our two.
oh, okay, all right,
Possibly the commission too.
okay,
That's why I see some of those little things that we didn't spend in the general fund, even though it's in a separate account,
could help.
offset, so that we're really not changing our overall totals, it's just redistributing it and changing the spending authority to cover the overages in the separate accounts,
Okay, all right.
kinda.
So how do you feel about the planning coming out of general fund? Should we not do that for clarity's sake?
It would just show up as a transfer out from general and a transfer in to Nicole's as a miscellaneous revenue.
Would it be better to see if we'd take it out of PILT for now, even though I hate to do that, or does it really not matter?
PILT has no restriction,
Right, except we don't like using PILT to
Except we don't
balance
like
the
using
budget.
it.
Right,
but there's nothing that says it can't be put back in too.
could be a loan until we figure something out. That
You
in
see
the
some of
library.
these, this is some of the little stuff that we're gonna get into to finish our budget, that
Right. Yeah, this is
I
what
will know
really
till I
gets
play
fun.
with some of this stuff a little bit to see what it looks, sounds good and running through my head, but until I see the numbers, I won't know for sure.
Okay,
I don't wanna say yes and then, well, whoops, sorry, I was wrong.
okay.
I don't want false hope. Mislead.
Okay, so we could actually address though just that 47,000 we could skip the GIS for now. Hopefully we'll hear back from somebody. If not, we can address it. We could address the clerk recorders, 11,000, sanitation of 2, and then put money in the legal defense fund for now. Is that a good plan, in your opinion?
Place to start.
Okay, how do you guys feel about
And
that?
that excess, we can use that between the commissioner's budget, the accounting budget, and our legal bill, okay?
If we need to.
So what that would do at this point, it would give Debbie, well, I guess that's the question. So 47,000 then gives us 11,000 to put in the clerk and recorder's account, 2,000 to put in the sanitation account. And then we would have 34,000 left over. What we could do is give 20 of that to the legal defense fund, and then Debbie has 14 that she can kind of see where it's needed within the general fund.
Where was the 20 going to, the legal fund?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What we could do is a one-time only loan for the GIS if we have to at this point, and can give it some time, and then give that department a year to come up with a proposal. Same with the library. We could go ahead and do a one-year infusion and see what we can do. And we do have still the valuations coming back, that it's gonna give us something to play with to help out those funds. The other thing that we need to be aware of is Eric's coming to meet with us next Tuesday, and he's going to do the countywide assessment. Some of the areas that we very well could be looking at, a report from him that says, you know, best practices would be different, could be HR. I expect that he probably will say, you guys need to do something different with HR. HR in-house will be more expensive, but we have so many problems that I think we're kind of looking down the track of having to address somebody being here that is knowledgeable in that area, that can actually just take care of everything. Plus, Debbie and Michelle are overly busy, and having to do the HR administration when that's hot and heavy, it is, I think, getting to the point where if we don't address that, we're going to have to get more staff. I'm curious to hear what Eric will have to say on that. I also think, and we talked about this a little bit before, that Eric's going to address the clerk and recorder treasurer situation. We've got one elected official who is responsible legally for everything to do with the treasury, clerk and recorder, elections, and school superintendent. That's way too much to put on one person. In a larger county, they would just be supervisor, and the deputies would have those responsibilities. Doug shares that, but he doesn't have a big enough staff to have dedicated, to be just a dedicated supervisor. So I expect we might be looking at another opportunity or issue there. Any other areas you guys think that we might have a county analysis come in and say, here's something else you guys should think about?
And going back to Doug's deal, that pretty much has to be done by the end of December. Because you have to be able to allow those people to file for that position, and you can't change it in the middle of it, you have to change it
You're right,
at the end of his, I don't think you can change it in the middle unless he agrees to it.
right.
But you still have to run it with the same general election, so it has to be done by January first, so that they can be in the election next fall and take office the next January.
Yeah,
So that has to be done by January for,
yeah. Or it could be done with like the next year. We're gonna do this in the next general, in 2020 versus 2018.
oh, okay.
We could always set something like that so that people can start thinking about it. That, just like we did with the redistricting lines, we can actually make it retro to later so that it gives people enough time to think if
Yeah,
they
but
would be
what is
interested.
when is his term?
2020,
Oh, it
Right.
is 2020,
I think so, yes.
okay.
I think he ran unopposed with you, and you were 16.
Okay. So that does give us some time, unless he wanted to do that, then you could do it in this election,
We could,
if that's what he wanted to do, but we have to make that decision before January first.
yeah.
I personally don't think you could physically get it done in that length of time.
It might be very complicated,
Yeah,
yeah. And
Okay.
Eric would know the steps we
Mhm.
need to
Yeah.
follow.
yeah.
Okay.
So I just don't wanna make any solid decisions that ties our hands from being able to address some of our issues. But I think if we just address those few things that we had on the agenda, and then, the rest, we can just wait till we have more information. Balancing from Doug and, evaluation from Debbie and answers from Eric, then I think we're still on a good track to getting this done in the next month.
Where I'm tweaking things now was being done in September
Right, right,
instead of July.
yeah.
I don't know. 2 months ahead almost, so it's more breathable, it gives time to make sure something doesn't get missed.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, that's been part of the problem, is there's so much going on, that some of that little stuff is falling through, found out later, after the fact, which isn't good.
Yeah,
I don't like that, I don't like to work that way, so having time to think, note, make sure it's check it twice to make sure, re-verify,
yeah.
it's just better.
One of the other things that I don't think we need to address, but I think we need to be aware of it, is when we hired the second person and the custodial position for maintenance. The deal was, and both parties came to sit with us, Sheriff's Department was going to pay 50% of the custodian and 30,000 of the assistant. And that was just because of how much time is spent in the sheriff's office. Taking away the money for the detective should have also been a discussion about maintenance. I don't think it's something we need to worry about, and Debbie, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the maintenance budget is strong enough. Again, we're one county. I think keeping the partnership is a more positive move than not. So in my opinion, I don't think it's something we need to address, but we need to be aware that it was a promise made, it hasn't been done yet, and I would suggest we forgive it for this year. Any thoughts?
I don't have a problem with that. I would like to keep it, see if Mike has a pretty good idea of just exactly what time we are spending over there. Cause I would think that as much as they put into it the last couple of years, that they should have things down to where they're just simply doing maintenance instead of rebuilding everything all the time from what a mess it was before.
Yeah, I think we're quickly getting there, although they're still working on a wall in D-Pod. Just finished a remodel of the sheriff, under sheriff offices, finished a remodel of the new office at the top of the stairs. Carpeting, yeah, it seems that when we're done, something new pops up.
Is Mike's billing that back to Wayne, is he, or is he not?
Just parts, not labor.
Just parts, okay.
Yeah, and not even all parts, he's paying for a lot of the parts, and, whenever he buys parts like for the shower, he will get multiple parts, that way he has things on hand,
Yeah,
so he doesn't have to wait. All of that he's paying for out of his budget in the general fund. Again, I'm not sure that's something we need to change, but I think we need to be aware of it. The general fund is paying for a lot of things for public safety, but we're one county. That's okay as long as we're tracking it, but it needs to be something we're aware of so that when people say, you know, come in and ask questions, we can tell them. General fund pays for a lot of things beyond just, for other departments.
Yeah, and Mike, so
specifically.
he can keep track of what he spends, he has, we've set up separate object codes, a 221 for detention operating supplies, 232 for detention, 341 for the utilities part of detention that come out of the one bill, so that we can keep track of, or he can keep track of out of his budget, how much of it is going or costing from the detention center,
Yeah,
jail side. So we did set those up when he first started, so he's kinda got an idea, and when he bills for things, that's where he puts them, kinda help keep track of it. But it's still coming out of the general fund.
and he does keep track of his hours pretty well too, his and his
He's got
staff.
a little logbook that he writes where he's at, what he's doing. It's like somebody billing for hours,
Yeah,
and keep track of what client you're doing how much for.
yeah,
So he does keep track of that, so he keeps a good idea of that. Cause he's curious too, how much his time, cause when he was hired, there was a lot of work being contracted out. That was costing a huge amount of money to the county, cause it was all contractor based. Well, he took over a lot of that and that reduced that, so that helped the sheriff's budget, but now he's taking it on in his time, so. I mean, it's still costing, but less, I guess is the. And he
Yeah.
don't mind doing it, he kinda likes doing it, so. Or at least he seems good humored about it.
Right. So, just so this is clear, I would move that we ask Extension, DES, and Maintenance to look at state surplus for, departmental vehicles. See if they can get some price quotes or options. With no commitment for purchasing at this point.
I would second that.
Moving second to have, DES maintenance and extension. Check or look at, getting vehicles. Any more discussion? No discussion, we'll vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed.
All right, and I would move that we, take the 27,000, previously allocated for half the detective position within the general fund and put 11,000 to the clerk and recorder treasurer budget, 2,000 to environmental health, and 20 to the legal defense fund.
I'll second that.
It's moved second, either that 27,000 is just stated. Any discussion, no discussion, go to a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed.
And I will move that, my math here, that the remaining 14,000, we go ahead and just set aside for now, with Debbie. That's it. That's an easy one. And that's probably not one we necessarily need a vote on unless you guys want to vote.
We'll just put down the rest will be reallocated at it.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. So the only other thing that I wanted to discuss, and Debbie, this is more for you, I guess, to help us with, contingency fund. We saw this at training yesterday. We need to be transparent with the public, let them know where we're spending money. Commissioners have a contingency fund because we spend so much on other things. But we always determine what those are. It's in the minutes, what it's for. It's a totally different monster. We don't allow contingency funds in any other departmental budgets because it doesn't tell the commissioners approving the charges what it's for, or the public what it's for. So Debbie has been working with Corey to determine where he wants the money he wants, the same dollars for his contingency fund. They need to be dispersed into actual object codes per bars. So anything more on that, Debbie?
We had some emails back and forth, and basically, I'm gonna create a line item for him instead of the contingency 199. It's gonna be a 390, because that's more along the lines of professional services, his expert witness, trial things that he anticipates it having. And so I'm gonna set that up, and he wants it called investigation and trial services. And so that's where his 4,200 that's in his contingency line now is gonna go, so that 199 goes away. And then he wanted his portion of the COLA to go into his contract deputy county attorney line. So that's something we're gonna have to address with him if I'm not gonna do that for him.
We put it in for a secretary, I mean, you could, I'd certainly suggest
So-
asking him, but it could go in his